Hi everyone, my name is Siamak and this is my Geosynthetics podcast. In this episode of my podcast, I'm with one of the very experienced engineers in geosynthetics in Australia. Warren Hornsey is my guest. Thank you, Warren, for your time and for talking to me and speaking with my audience today.
Thanks, Siamak. I'm pleased to be here.
So, Warren, it's very interesting and very good time in terms of your new laboratory that you have set up, a new place, and lots of new things are happening. I actually had a chance to come up and see your new place, and very interesting, very beautiful place, and congratulations on opening the new laboratory.
Yeah, great to have you. Yeah.
And we had a quick chat in there as I was in your office, and I would suggest we just have a quick look at the conversation between us in that when I was there in the laboratory, and then we come back here and have another question for you.
Sure, let's do that.
I start like all my other episodes with your career. Basically, just want to know where you started. Being a geosynthetics engineer, and how did you end up in testing?
I guess it was just a stroke of luck that I landed up in this industry. It wasn't really something that I planned. 1997, I bumped into a friend of mine who was working in the geosynthetics industry, and they were looking for an engineer to do design work for them. And I thought I'd give it a try, and really enjoyed it. I never expected it, but it was one of those things. It was one of those lucky moves that you make sometimes, and it worked out really well. So
yeah,
I've been involved since 1997.
Perfect. 23 years in the industry.
Yep.
And you started in South Africa and then moved to Australia?
Yeah, started in South Africa, did all my education in South Africa, and then moved to Australia in 2001. Mm-hmm. And that's probably defined me as an engineer. Moving over to Australia, you get used to doing things the way they are in the place that you grew up and you were educated. And moving to a new place opens you to different ways of doing things, and really pushes you to work really hard to gain a reputation and a presence in the industry, which you kind of expect when you in your home country.
That's
and
right.
It's something that you really have to work at in a new country.
Yeah, absolutely. My second question, Warren, is about so you are a laboratory. You own and operate a laboratory, geosynthetics laboratory in Australia.
Yep.
What is your opinion about testing in general on geosynthetics? How important it is? What do you find interesting in it?
Well, I think it's really important. What we've seen in the past and what we learned with running the laboratory is that when we first started testing back in 2013 here, we had regular failures of materials, and that's for a number of reasons. But what we've seen over the years is the failure rate of geosynthetics has certainly declined over the years as people have understood the ramifications of failures. They've really, the manufacturers and suppliers now, in 90% of the cases, maybe 99% of the cases, are doing the right thing, are supplying quality products. And at the end of the day, what we're doing here is part of our role is to protect the environment. And if we have to do independent testing to ensure that protection occurs, then I think it's really important to get it done. Otherwise, what's the point in doing it?
Exactly. Yeah. And part of it is like health and safety, and like you said, the environment, and basically you want to know that the material that you design as part of your entire structure actually is are durable enough or strong enough, and basically doing or durable for the design life.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, as an engineer, you work off people's data sheets, and you base your design on a piece of paper or document that's produced by a manufacturer, and you may build factors of safety into those designs. But in some cases, if you're not checking that is actually what what's going into the ground or what's going into the lining system is actually what you designed for, falls within your factors of safety, you could land up with a failure that risks your reputation or your company's reputation. And whether it's your fault or not is irrelevant when the lawyers get involved.
Exactly.
And when I first started with Geosynthetics, there was a large landfill failure in South Africa.
Mm-hmm.
And it was the company that I'd done my university studies with and so on, so they sponsored me at university. And it went through years of litigation, and at the end it was found that the engineers did nothing wrong, but by that stage the company's reputation had been severely damaged, and they never really recovered in the landfill market due to that. And so it's something that this is just one part of that process of protecting your reputation and your integrity.
Exactly. Yeah. And then I think it brings us to the importance of independent testing, because that's part of the testing cycle. Let's say. So you've worked from manufacturer's side for many years, and then you've been doing independent testing with your laboratory. What do you think is the importance of independent testing? I know you've sort of given a lot of lectures about this in the past. Why is this important, and what's the need for the independence testing? But if you could.
Well, I think there's two aspects about this. Firstly, people make mistakes. So in manufacturing plants, people add the wrong additives just as it's a human error occurs in things that you do on a day-to-day basis. It happens, and you make mistakes, and it slips through the cracks. And certainly, manufacturing QA is not at the same frequency and level as what we do as CQA testing on many of the sites around Australia. So things can slip through the cracks when that happens. So independent testing is there to check and find those issues if there's a mistake being made along the way. And then there's areas where really people perform better when they're getting watched, essentially. I mean, it's whether if you know that the speed limit is 60 kilometers an hour and there's a policeman waiting to catch you, you stick to 60 kilometers an hour. And in the manufacturing process, and I've worked for manufacturers for years, and I don't want to criticize them in any way, but there is a lot of pressure to produce goods for the lowest possible cost, the fastest way, and so on. And that leads to people taking shortcuts. If you don't have the right people running the plants or supervising the manufacturing, the people take shortcuts. And we're there to ensure that if there's shortcuts being taken, that those materials don't land up on your site. By all means, send them to somebody else's site, but you don't want them on your site. And that's really where we see our value coming in. And at the end of the day, if we're preventing contamination of groundwater and so on, I don't think you can put a price on that. Absolutely. Commercially.
Yeah. So thanks again, Warren. It was a very interesting conversation in your office, and again, congratulations on the new laboratory. And I think one of the things that I wanted to ask you after that was really around education in geosynthetics and how important education is. IGS has a very successful initiative about Educate the Educator, which we had one of those events in Australia in 2019. And also I know TRI and yourself are doing a lot of educational events and trainings. And when I was in your laboratory, I actually saw that you have a dedicated section of your office for this training events. If you want to tell us about what your plans are, or what do you think education in geosynthetics are important?
Yeah, look, I think they're vitally important. We don't see a lot of stuff taught about geosynthetics in the undergraduate university courses. I know from my experience, I knew nothing about geosynthetics when I came out of university. It was something that you learnt on the job. And it's a relatively new subject, so there's a lot of information out there, and I think the most important thing for engineers is the education and understanding how to use these products properly. And there's international conferences that are very valuable to go to. I think they're invaluable. And then there's the local short courses that various people run around the country and internationally. But the most important thing is the education of engineers in terms of these materials. They're not all the same. They all behave differently. And knowing how to apply them is critically important to the success of a job. If you get it wrong, it can really go wrong badly with these materials. So learning the best way to use these materials and how to apply them is critically important to us as engineers.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think at least some basic education as part of a civil engineering or geotechnical engineering degree is a good start, and that's what most of the IGS members are really keen to have. That it is happening to some extent in Europe and North America, but in Australia we need to think about it. And when the young engineers have that basic knowledge, then they start a professional career. It will help them to extend their knowledge and know more during their project work and professional work.
Yeah, look, and I think the webinars that we're running for the ACRGS are very important to attend those sort of things. And one thing you've got to realize is that we're all learning new things. There's constantly developments in terms of the products that are developed. So people are changing and improving their products and how to apply them. So you never know it all. I've been in this industry 20 odd years, and I'm always learning new things about the products and how they work and interact with the materials that we build with and around. So I think the key is not to sit back and think that you know it all as well. It's just that you keep on learning about it, because things change rapidly in this industry.
Exactly, 100%. And as my last question, Warren, for this episode, I want to know the highlight of your career. I know you've had many years in the geosynthetic industry. You have worked in the manufacturing, in the laboratory side as a consultant. And I just want to know what's, in your opinion, the highlight of your career, the odd years in this industry, and why do you think that is the highlight?
Well, I guess I think my highlight is getting into geosynthetics. I came from a civil engineering consulting industry initially, working in an office doing design work and so on, and got the opportunity to work in the geosynthetics industry, and it just suddenly opened my eyes to an exciting area of civil engineering that I'd never come across before. And I think it gave me opportunities that working as a roads engineer would never have given to me. I've traveled around the world, going to different conferences, speaking to international experts about these things, and growing my knowledge constantly over these years. So I think just getting into geosynthetics was probably the highlight. Moving country was probably second into that. So that moving into Australia from South Africa was a big change, and it taught me to look at things slightly differently. You get trained in one way in one country, and then you get exposed to different things in other countries, and I think that's really useful as well. So don't always it's good not to be stuck in a rut and do the same things over and over again. It's very useful, expanding your horizons. So yeah, I think those are the two highlights. I mean, without a doubt, geosynthetics has made my career certainly enjoyable, and it's still fun after 30 odd years in the industry. So yeah, that's great.
Yeah, and I want to add to that, living on the Gold Coast and
oh yeah,
surfing.
Yeah, you've got to get the work-life balance right, and I'm lucky enough to live on the Gold Coast, so I can surf 2 or 3 times a week. During the week, I can sneak off before work starts in summer, which is great. So there is a value in getting this work-life balance right.
Absolutely, yeah, exactly. Thanks, Warren, again for your time, and I really appreciate you gave us this time. And I'm sure you had a really, like you planned a very big opening ceremony for your new laboratory, but COVID-19 hit, and I'm sure you probably plan another one in the future. But in the meantime, I think you always welcome people, engineers or professionals to come and see you in your lab, and you always, you know, happy to show us around this new equipment, new testing, and very interesting laboratory that you have.
Sure, thanks. Yeah, Siamak, I mean, COVID just came at the wrong time. It was literally a month before we were going to have our grand opening. But we plan to have that again next year if things sort of stabilise by then, and we'll get George Kerner over to be part of the openings, and he's very, very knowledgeable. So it'll be a useful education tool once again. So yeah, thanks again for inviting me along for this, Siamak.
Thank you, Warren, and yeah, have a good day. And thanks everyone for watching this podcast episode, and we'll see you next time.